Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled, Do I Take the Keys to the Jet from the Colonel? And Tailspin Tommy, if you're old enough to remember this series and the unwritten rule, right in shortly after 1927, when Lindbergh had crossed the Atlantic, there was just a great interest in aviation in the country. And this series, a comic strip series, came out, which they later in the 30s made into movies, and I saw as a kid in the 50s some of these movies, and there was Tailspin Tommy. And Tailspin's good buddy Skeeter always talked about the unwritten rules. Well, in aviation, there are some unwritten rules, and this is kind of one of those unwritten rules. Now, in some commands, it's well documented, but in systems command at the time, things were a bit more loose. Now, I was the T-38 senior flight examiner in Stannavale back in the late 70s out at the Air Force Flight Test Center at Edwards. And Edwards is a very special place. We got the best pilots in the world out there, and it is really a remarkable place to fly, and the people that fly are just very interesting. But like I said, I was the T-38 senior flight examiner, and that's the little plaque they give you when they left, because they figure you have to be the rear end, the southern end of a north-going horse to do well in the job. And yeah, in some respects you do. And I've talked about a few of those stories. Now, I tended to fly with a lot of people, astronauts, test pilots, and almost every single one of them was very good. But there were some people who were not test pilots who were still very good pilots, but some who were not, or not as good as, it would have been nice to have been. Now, out at Edwards, the very, of course, senior people were very experienced test pilots, and they were very great test pilots. And I know of people. I never got the chance to fly with General Yeager when he would come out, but I knew people who flew with him, and even at the time, long retired, they told me he was still really, really good. So he never lost it. But the thing about flying something like a T-38 is it's a relatively easy aircraft to fly. It talks to you. It's just a fun, easy aircraft to fly. But it's a high-speed aircraft, and you have to keep ahead of it, or it can eat your lunch. Now, there was one very senior colonel out there that it was kind of the unwritten rule that he always flew with the T-38 senior flight examiner, whoever that may be, and I kind of was handed him when the other individual left, so that's fine. I was looking for all the flying I could get, and it was fun. I got to see the really nice quarters when we'd go cross country, and when the wing commander comes out with a staff car and they roll up the red carpet and they give you coffee and stuff. I'm digressing already, but they really treat you nicely, so that was kind of fun. So I used to joke that he would do all the flying and I would do all the paperwork, but okay, so we flew together a lot, but he still had to take the various check rides, the contact check ride, various qualification check rides, and one of them was the instrument check. So we're going to shoot the ILS out at Palmdale base, which was just south of Edwards there. And okay, we get set up in the T-38. He's in the front seat there, and I'm in the back, and we're getting ready to fly this ILS. We're getting vectored over there. And the ILS, the indication on the HSI, the horizontal situation indicator there on the left side with the yellow arrow is the standard needle, which most pilots should be familiar with. And on the right is the arrow of the little control head where you set the frequency. Okay, well, we're getting radar vectors to the approach. And we're kind of not doing a very good job. We're going through the course, and the basic reason was because the colonel didn't have the right frequency checked in, and he said it. So I kind of made I turned up the volume and I made a comment. Says, does that identifier sound right to you, Colonel? It sounds a little off to me. And he listens to it and goes, oh yeah, the wrong frequency set in here. So we got the right frequency set in. We went back. We did the approach. Okay. Not too sterling. It would have been an obvious bust depending on how far it would have gone, but I did a little bit of intervention there. Okay, well, and I've talked about this earlier. He has to do a chase check ride, and I have no idea why he wanted to do this. He never flew chase. He was busy with administrative duties. The only time he flew was when we flew together, and he had never flown a chase mission with me before. So why he wanted a check ride was kind of beyond me. But okay, we got the check ride. It's not an easy one. This is a 45-degree dive bomb, and we were doing a 60-degree dive bomb, which takes special entry procedures and is not an easy maneuver to say the least, and has to be done just right. Well, it really got screwed up. And I yelled recover. I came on the aircraft at the same time he yelled recover. We barely missed hitting the ground. It was not a good adventure at all. And this was a case where we come back and we park the aircraft. And as we start to walk away, I say, Colonel, and he looks at me and I says, do you ever plan on flying chase? And he looks at me for a second because he thinks he knows what's going on here. Because if he said yes, we would have not had a good event because I would have had to bust him on the check ride. He looked at me and he says, no, I don't. So I looked at him and says, you passed. Again, kind of the unwritten rule. And wherever he went, he always flew with me. And when I left Stanivel, I handed him off to the next person. And of course, like I said, with the Tailspin whole Tommy adventure, the unwritten rule, some commands required that the senior officers always fly with an instructor. We did not have that at Edwards, but it was kind of the unwritten rule that certain people, very high-ranking people, never flew alone. And this guy had been a very experienced fighter pilot. He'd flew the F-104, and you don't fly that without having your defecation all together because it'll kill you. And, so he had been a good pilot, and if you stay proficient, you can keep your currency, your ability, your flying ability, all this, you can keep it up to speed. But if you're sitting at a desk for most of the day and only fly occasionally, these aircraft will eat you up. Okay, I'm 74 now, and it's becoming a concern of mine. But, of course, I don't fly the T-38 anymore. I'd love to, but I don't. Don't have a checkbook that big. But I still fly aircraft that can be demanding even this level. Now, he was back, at this time, he would have been back close to 50, so that's still pretty young. But military aircraft are at the cutting edge, and even though it's a trainer, you still have to know exactly what you're doing, or it will eat your lunch. So here's me, and it brings the question up now for me. Okay, I got the Wright Brothers Award there, and it's amazing that they were able to get them to sign it. I think that's quite a feat there. But okay, I received that 3 years ago. Well, I was I think a pretty good pilot over the last 50 years, and I think I'm still a pretty good pilot even 3 years later now, 53 years. But I've known a lot of very good pilots, SR-71 test pilots and that, who are just outstanding pilots who don't fly anymore. They either decided, hey, that's it, or for other reasons, life got in the way, and they're getting older, and they just kind of let it go, and it's just not something they do. So how am I going to know when it's time for me to stop? Well, if the insurance rates don't kill me first, and if I don't kill myself first, I've got two airplanes. I've got a Great Lakes biplane, open cockpit. I still fly aerobatics, and you kind of got to know what you're doing and have it together to fly aerobatics, and I fly a lot of patterns to keep proficient. Sometimes they're good, and as I did a recent video, sometimes they're not the best. And that will come to the point where it will tell me, I hope, that, hey, maybe it's time for you to hang this up. And I also have a very nice Turbo 310R. And it doesn't have a simple cockpit there. It takes a lot to keep the finger button and typing skills up to speed. So that's going to be kind of an indication to me when I'm starting to have trouble doing that, hey, maybe it's time that I hang this up. I will probably sell this aircraft in the next couple of years. I've been having really fun time with maintenance on it, with the fuel pump. The vacuum pump's giving me some trouble, but that'll be sorted out eventually. But it's been a little bit of a pain, but that'll be sorted out. But when will I know to quit? Well, fortunately, I have this pilot, my oldest son, who I taught to fly, and now is a senior pilot for a major airline, one that I was very familiar with. And he flies with me every chance he gets. And I expect him to, if I don't figure it out first, I expect him to tell me that, hey, I think it's time. Okay. And I will abide by that. And I think, any of us who are getting older at this point should have somebody that's looking at us and saying, you might want to reconsider this. So that will happen someday. I know some people who are flying very well into their 80s, and hopefully I can do that. But, every once in a while you do something like I'm looking at, how am I going to enter this pattern? And I'm going, well, I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm going, well, man, am I slipping now? If I'm trying to visualize this. And yeah, it comes together, but maybe not as fast as it used to. And all those things, every time you get something like that, you got to say to yourself, maybe you need to consider this, or you just need to do some more refreshment on what you're flying so you make sure you keep current. But anyway, that's the story of one colonel that I did not take the keys away from. It was kind of an unwritten rule that you don't do that. He was observed and never flew solo, although he technically was capable of flying solo. He never did, and he ended up his career in a non-flying job. And one of the test pilots, a friend of mine, Pete, actually was able to take a T-38 down to where he was stationed and give him one last flight in it before he ended his career. So that was kind of a nice ending. He never he never got into trouble because we didn't let him get into trouble, and he ended his career nicely and kept his ego intact. So when you get super experienced, yeah, you're watched, but you're given a little bit more grace than if you were brand new starting pilot, where they'd come down harder on you if you had deficiencies. But once you've kind of established yourself, yeah, it can be kind of a different set of rules. But we kept his ego intact and we kept him safe flying. He didn't hurt himself or anybody else. So that's my story. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting and informative.